Here we go, y'all. Okay, great. All right, thank you all. This is Lisa Retamoso, our last Lunch and Learn for the Talent Search. Well, EOC season. EOC proposal is due on Thursday. Um, Glad y'all are here with us. I also have with me Lourdes is with us, and also Teresa. And we've got Donna and Leah monitoring chat and all that good stuff. So let's get straight to any questions that you guys may have regarding the submission. Let me start with my question. Lourdes and Teresa, did you all notice, is it just me, or on the program profile form, is objective D completely missing from the form?
Yeah, so you have to go back in there and download the correct one because they did update it later. So yeah,
Oh,
so the new one, I think it has like a new name on it, but when you go out to the application, there is a new attachment.
so we have to go back to grants.gov and
Yeah.
download it again, and they fixed it because
Mhm,
Teresa, I looked it up yesterday and I was like, wait a minute, what
mhm,
happened to objective D? It's completely off. And if you didn't know, you wouldn't know that it was missing.
mhm.
Okay, great. Do we have any
Yeah.
questions about that form? Thank you, Lourdes. I thought I was
Mhm.
going crazy.
Yeah,
Let's
and
see
you know
here.
that's not the only problem with the form. So even when you download the form, um, there's a new section on the back of it where you put your target area where you can describe it, and you can
Uh-huh.
type in, like the area. But what happens with the profile is that when you try to put how many numbers you think you're going to get from each one of your target areas, everything populates with that number. So you almost have to save the document as a totally different name and then try to go back in there and in the editing that form to be able to type in your information. So
Someone mentioned that to me. A client said that they were
mhm,
struggling with that. So the deal is when you download it, even the new version that has the
mhm.
objective D listed on it, you're going to have to save it under a new name and basically use your editing, edit the PDF, right?
Mhm. Yes.
To remove that, or just to plug in your information for your target
Just
areas.
plug in your target area and your numbers. So
Okay.
mhm.
Okay. Do we have any questions about that? Let me see. We do have a question here. I don't know if it's about that, but let's see here. Let's see. Page 23 of the RFP mentions the abstract in part 3. Abstract form in part 4, project narrative, application narrative mentions a cover letter. Are these the same thing? Different things? What
No.
should go into the cover letter of the application
Okay.
narrative?
So the cover letter, you don't have a cover letter, okay? The cover letter is the SF 424 form, okay? And that comes from the package itself. So you
Okay.
won't even see that unless you're in the grants.gov and you're filling out that information. So whoever, if you're the individual, because we're all in different places, right? Some of us, we fill out the package and then we have somebody who, at our organization or at our institution submits that. And so depending on how you're taking care and submitting this package, so if you're submitting it, you'll see it. If you are the one that's uploading your information into grants.gov, then you will see the form itself. If you're not, then whoever is submitting that for you, you're just providing in the area, they're uploading, your abstract, your one-page double-space abstract. Okay. And then in a separate section, you're attaching your project narrative. And that's your table of contents plus your up to 65 pages. And that goes into the project narrative. And then
So,
the other question was the attachments. And so in the attachments section is where you'll upload your profile. You will upload, absolute priority 1, invitational priority 2 as separate documents. And then if you have your logic model, if you didn't include that within your project narrative, then you'll also want to upload that into the other attachments.
okay, so just to recap on the very first question, there is
Mhm.
no, the only cover page would be that SF 424 form, which
Mhm.
you would only see when it's not, that's something you download. It's something that's when you log on to grants.gov, it's something that you fill out online.
Mhm. Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Which is separate from the abstract.
Yes, that's
Okay.
correct.
And a logic model you can put within your narrative. I honestly prefer, because I don't know if the readers will read anything that's not part of the narrative, like in the past. They don't read other attachments besides the priorities, right? Or the so just to play it safe, I'm trying to put anything I want for sure them to see within the narrative. But if you're going to talk about the logic model and then refer to it, then it would go in those other attachments, the same section upload where you would be uploading as separate documents the priorities.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Yep.
um
The other
here's
section. Mhm.
Okay, here's a question. Our profile sheet. Back to the profile sheet. Our EOC is writing to support 1,100 participants over 6 counties. In the target area part of the form, we were just talking about that. Do I list each county on its own line? Do I have to say how many participants from each county? And this is all estimated, right? We are not held to keep this for real numbers to reach in each county, right, Lourdes?
True. What you're doing is you're indicating over, and I think you can take two different approaches to that. Because remember, within our narrative, we're describing our target area. And so if in our target area, I'm going to serve 6 counties and I mention all 6 counties, then I probably want you on the project, on the profile sheet. I want to list those 6 counties, and I probably want to give a good estimate about how many I'll recruit from each one of those counties. Some of your counties had greater need within that needs section, right? So you had higher numbers of potential individuals. So maybe you want to, take that approach. So it's really up to you. If you, in your narrative, you described one huge giant area and you didn't really break it down by counties or anything like that, then you probably will just list one target area and then say all 1,100 are coming from them. So it's a different approach you can take. But the key is that you have to fill that part out. And you have to say, how many do you anticipate recruiting from each one of those areas?
Great. Thank you for that. And I think
Mhm.
people, were having questions about that. And I love how you answer that, Lourdes. It really is dependent upon your target area. One
Mhm.
target area you get. But if you have one target area made up of 3 counties, okay. One target area made up of, like we used to have, maybe one target area made up of 6 census tracts, then maybe those, somehow, and just estimate whatever, like you said, if there's more need in one area, then you put more as an estimate of participants that will be served in that area. But it does not mean that you have to save slots when you actually get up and running, that you actually have to stick to those numbers. That's just to give them an idea. And it's a plan. But when we get out there and start recruiting and things like that, if one area is giving you an eligible area is more favorable to your project, then you shouldn't like hold it back to save slots, as long as
Mhm.
you can show that you're being equal about your identification, recruitment, selection.
Mhm.
Okay, so let's see here. We have a link to the Google Drive. Yes. Okay, let's see if we have any other questions. Come on now. This is y'all's. Again, I'm going to reiterate that I told some of my clients over this past weekend, I said, you need to upload the majority of the documents. Even if your narrative, if you're still tweaking or working on your narrative, getting final need data, trying to find that better lower baseline. Fine, you could do that up until you feel comfortable, but you don't have to have that done before you start uploading the other pieces. And I think that's the stressful part, is trying to make sure you finish the narrative and then you go, okay, that's done. Now let's upload everything. And I'm like, no, I think you could almost have everything uploaded. Right, Lourdes, if you had to, couldn't you have mostly everything uploaded, even if you're holding on to the narrative to the last minute? Please go
Oh
over
yeah,
that.
yeah, and I'm happy to share my workspace. I'm actually going to share one thing real quickly because I know one of the questions um, that has come up quite a bit, and even when we were in talent search. Can you all see the budget information form? I'm trying to look at what I'm sharing.
Yes,
Okay,
yes, I
good.
can see that.
Okay, great. So I think. And Teresa, feel free to jump into, what your experience is too with questions folks have had on this form. So, and Lisa too. And so with this particular form, this is one of the forms that you have to fill out or that your individual who's your administrator on your campus that's submitting it. And so I think maybe some of you, if you've seen the package already, you've seen it in the downloads in the grants.gov. But this is one form, and this is what they're referring to as cover sheets, right? Is this particular document. When you fill in the information on the program grant, you can just type in there, it's the Educational Opportunity Center. And then you're identifying, the the eight four. I'm like, my brain is like so fried on all these numbers already, but you'll fill in the information about which is the grant, right? So for EOC, it's 84.066A. So you'll fill that in B. And then you won't put anything in C or D, but in E is where you're going to say, this is the amount of money I'm requesting. And then it totals across to G and it totals down to number 5. So everything, there's subtotals within this. The next page is where you'll fill in from your budget, from your first year budget only, is you'll fill in how much is the personnel, how much is the fringe, and all of this adds all the way down to your total I. Okay, so everything gets added in there. And then the indirect charges is you fill that in. Okay. I think that was one of the misconceptions that folks kept having and thinking that there was a formula in there, and there is not a formula. So just ensure that as you're working with your budget, that you've calculated what's that modified total direct cost, and then what's your percentage, if it's your 8%. Then you plug in that number in there and it should total to the total amount in K with what you are asking for that first year of your budget. B's is column 2, 3, 4. Of course, those are all going to stay blank, and then it'll total across to column number 5. Okay, so just make sure there, be careful, make sure everything that your numbers total what you are asking for. The next part of that, the non-federal resources, we don't have any cost sharing with this particular grant. So for most of us, this next section C is going to be blank, or you're going to enter the 0 values in there. Okay, because you're not asking for any money. And then in the forecasted cash needs in section D, in this particular area, you're going to essentially, you can take your full amount that you're asking for and divide it by 4. For most of us, we're not like an Upward Bound program that most of our program salaries are spent, and in most of our expenses are in the summer. So we're not like that, or McNair. So you can just take the amount that you're asking for and divide it by 4 and enter that into quarter 1, quarter 2, quarter 3, and quarter 4. And then that will total to that total for the first year. So the amount that you're asking for. Okay. In column E, some of these will pre-populate. So that 16A column will pre-populate that this is for Educational Opportunity Center. And then for columns B, C, D, and E in that section E, you're just going to enter the same amount. You're asking for X amount of dollars, the same amount that you asked for in the first year, and total that across for every one of those years 4 through, years 2 through 5. Okay. In 21 and 22, you do not have to enter anything. And then in 23, you can leave that blank. Okay. So I think those are some of the questions, quite a few of the questions that I got previously and or even in Talent Search. Teresa, is there anything that you'd like to add to that and what you might have had questions on?
No, because I don't submit for the
Mm-hmm,
clients, but I have gotten a question about this particular document.
mm-hmm.
And so it's good to know that what you just said is is what I basically told them. So yeah, but yeah, I did get one question about this particular document, but I'd never seen it because I never used it when I was submitting. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I have a couple of couple of things here, Lourdes. I'm so glad you're going through this because I've gotten a lot of questions too, as well as Teresa from the clients. And luckily, I had an example, which Donna, I've sent it to you via Teams. It's in. I thought I'd already uploaded to the Lunch and Learn, but could you post it in the chat? The sample form. It's a sample example plugged in. It was plugged in for Talent Search, but you could follow the same thing. Lourdes was showing you a blank form, right, Lourdes? The blank form. And what I have is the an example that some of y'all may have received as well, but I'm going to upload it as a reminder in the chat. Donna, were you able to do that?
Yes, it's there.
Okay. Okay, great. Okay, so see that example. And then let's just make sure that we answer some of these questions here. So let me start with this one here. In the budget form Lourdes just showed, in the first column, column E as in Edward, is that amount the 5-year total or just for the first year budget?
So for this particular, I'm on the first page, right? You're going to enter in column E, the first year only. Okay.
Okay, everybody got that? First year only.
First year
Okay,
only.
and then okay, and then we have another question. There's the one earlier there. I think it might be maybe the same question. Let me get to it here. All right. All right. So let's go. In SF 424, in the estimated funding, do we put the amount for the first year or the total amount for all 5 years?
You're going to enter only the first year. So every one of these parts of it for this first page, right? You're only going to enter the first year. You will in and this part, right? Section A and B, you're only entering the first year. Okay. So column again, 2, 3, and 4 will have nothing in there. Okay. Let me try to zoom in there a little bit. Okay. So columns 2, 3, and 4, you're not going to enter anything. And all of these have formulas in here. So whatever you enter in column 1 is going to come over here and total in 5. Okay. You are only asking again in column A and B and sections A and B for the first year only. When you get to the section E, then that's where you will indicate for the 5 years. Okay. The first year you don't have to worry about because you've already told them on that in section A and section B. But in section E, in this column where it says B first, second, third, and fourth, and it is kind of deceiving the way they've titled it, but they're asking you about your second, third, fourth, and fifth year. Okay. So that's where you'll put the same amount. So if you're asking for, let's say 500,000, then in column B, you're going to put 500,000. In C, you're going to put 500,000. And then D, you're going to put 500,000. And in E, you're going to put 500,000. Your section A and B would have already totaled to the $500,000 that you're asking for. Okay.
Now, Lourdes, I have a question. And maybe I hadn't seen this before, but is it different this time around that they want the first year? I don't know if it's on the second page or third page of that form. For some reason, the first year they want to know how much money you need in quarters. Is that new or has that been around for a minute?
This is new. No, this is the first time that they are asking you. So in section D, that's where they're asking you about how much money you need per quarter. I think what they're trying to do is anticipate, like how I mentioned in Upward Bound, we usually spend most of our money in the summer because, the tuition, room and board, and all of those things we might be paying for our bridge scholars or whatever we're paying. So we have, greater needs in the summer for Upward Bound. But for EOC, we're pretty consistent throughout the year recruiting and serving. So that's why I'm recommending just divide that by 4. Right. So if I'm asking for 500,000, I'm probably going to put $125,000 in each one of those quarters. Right. And then the other amount's going to come, of course, from that first year. Okay. So, excuse me. So that will total 125. I probably didn't do my math very well, but you get what I mean, right? At this point, I can't even see the numbers anymore.
And also the example is helpful because there's numbers actually plugged in there that people can follow the example of the form that you're showing. Real quick, though, not to confuse it, just to make sure that we're literally on the right page. what you're talking about, that form is different from the cover form we talked about
Mhm.
earlier, the
No,
form that
no,
you don't
no,
see until you
no.
go online. Now, on that cover form, which is
Mhm,
another, I forget the name of it, but
mhm,
they also they ask you 10 times,
mhm,
estimated funding. Now, on that cover form, not the budget form you're sharing, but on the
mhm,
cover form, do
mhm.
we also put first year or the total amount for all 5 years?
Let me go ahead and get that. Hold on a second. I'm gonna stop this and then get into my other one so
Okay.
that you
And while you're
can.
doing that,
Yeah.
I was going to answer another question that is
Mhm,
across the board, and let me know if Teresa and Lourdes, if you agree. Someone asked, when entering salaries and fringe benefits, do we enter actual amounts from current employees, or do we enter amounts as if all were new? And I would put, you basically, if everybody is existing, you start from your existing budget, what you have to pay the people you currently have right now, and possibly if there's any increases that are going to happen in September, for everybody that's right now on board, what are they making right now? What will they need to be making in September? And what will the new fringe benefit rate be for that? It's better to have I don't know if you're going to have new employees by the time you actually get refunded, but it's always better to have more money in salaries and fringe than not enough. So I would definitely not devise a budget that's not accurate when it means, how much I'm currently paying have to pay my staff. I think that's maybe what the question is. So I would do actual amounts from current
mhm,
employees. Would you not agree, Teresa?
Yeah, I agree because you don't want to run into a deficit the first year in your salaries
Mhm.
and benefits. That's the worst thing that could happen because you really wouldn't have anywhere to pull it from because, the budget is pretty lean in general. So, yeah,
Already.
definitely the current salaries, what we try to do is we bump it up just a slight bit in case there's a raise between now and the time that the grant is funded. So that and usually these are some projections that we're able to get from the campus
Right.
the campus HR or yeah whoever it is that has those fringe benefit numbers. They may be preliminary, but it's better to be over than under.
mhm,
Right. And remember everyone, this is a placeholder budget. By the time you get refunded, stuff's going to happen. You may have to restructure, who knows? And besides that, the department, whichever they're going to want you to submit when you get your GAN, your grant award notification. They'll say, "Okay, we need a first year budget." And you're like, "Wait a minute, I turned one in." Oh, no, no, no. You need to turn in a whole new one. That's your real budget. That's what you can be for real. Right now, just make it make sense and go by, yes, definitely you want to plan for what you have to pay your current employees, not new employees,
Right.
but don't get so stuck on the is everything perfect and all that. You have time to make it perfect. You will have to make it perfect for your first year budget. Okay, Lourdes, you're going to show us something.
Okay, so this is grants.gov, and and anybody that has a grants.gov account, you can create a workspace, okay? And so the workspace is what you use to submit your grant. It kind of like keeps track of all of the documents. It ensures that everything is properly completed and attached. And then the individual from your university, from your college, from your agency, from your school, whoever is submitting for you, right, is going to go ahead and review this package for completion and for completeness, and then hit that submit. So when I logged in, I have different workspaces because I also had my talent search one recently. But so you'll see here's my different ones. And the idea of creating that workspace is that it already ties it back to the application itself. So whoever's submitting for you has already done this. So then you can go ahead and manage it. So I'm gonna, for example, open up my package because it's not yet been submitted. So you can see that I've already, included some of that information. You'll see it's because it's passed already. That I already have documents in there. I think somebody in Sharon, I think your question that you have is you're waiting for final approval. And that's where I'm at. They haven't yet submitted because I'm still waiting for the final approval as well. My institution is still approving everything that I have in the package. And before they approve it, I mean, they want to review everything, right? But the other thing that they will tell tell me, okay, I'm done reviewing. And once they are done reviewing, then I can go ahead and say, okay, everything is complete. And once you'll see that I have some things that are still in progress, because those are the things I'm waiting for their approval for. But once I get those done and I say, okay, it's complete, like I have these others where I have all my attachments and everything, then I'll finally have an opportunity to say, okay, it's complete, notify my individual on campus that everything is now complete, and then they can go ahead and submit. So I can upload and get my package ready, but I cannot submit on behalf of the university. Okay, so.
And I think that's what I meant too, that you
Mhm,
guys want to go ahead and
mhm,
upload if you're able to get access or have someone give you access so you can upload so they can review, but
mhm,
definitely nothing gets submitted until someone else says it's okay, but it doesn't mean that you have to wait until the narrative is completely done to start
mhm,
this whole stressful process of uploading
mhm,
forms.
mhm. Yep. So the question about the application and the cover sheet, that's this first one. Okay. So this is, where you're applying, what type of application is this? And a lot of it gets pre-populated again because it's tied to the application itself. But I'm telling it, this is an application. It's a new application. Um, I'm also required to fill out something else on my campus, another what's called Quali. And so I have to upload documents there and it has to be routed to all folks at the university. So I have to indicate, who's my applicant identifier. So that's my number there, letting them know that that's also tied to my university account. But now I'm giving them all of the information about the package. So this is your cover sheet. Okay. This is what is identified as the cover sheet, whether you fill it out or somebody on your campus does. But you respond to it. You have who is your individual that's going to be submitting that on your behalf and the type of institution you are. So you'll see a lot of the information again is pre-populated. And then something that is very important on here is the applicant and your target area. Because remember, the application itself indicates the application says that in the event of a tie, we're going to go back to your congressional districts. And I think that's what really puts us all at a disadvantage. If you have your institution is in a congressional district where the income is really high, where the number of individuals who have degrees is really high, because then they're going to look at that and say, well, you don't have significant need, and so that might impact you. But you want to tell them also, you'll notice that I've also told them not only is my institution in this district, this congressional district, but here's my target area. Okay. So ensure that whoever's submitting that for you knows and is aware of what's your target area that you're going to serve, because you have gone after the target area that has significant need, right? And that's what we wrote to. So because we needed to show that there's significant need in our target areas. Okay, you'll notice that every one of these packages indicate once you've added things to it, that it will say, okay, how much are you asking for? Who's the person? Eventually, when my person at my campus submits, then they'll go ahead and hit the submit button. Okay, but you can save it, you can close it, you can come back to it, you can do whatever you need to. In the meantime, I'm just going to go ahead and close it, and I'm going to leave my form unlocked. I leave it unlocked because that means whoever's coming in to review it knows I haven't locked it, right? And they can still get in there to review it. But that's your cover sheet, is that SF 424. You'll notice that I'm not going to open all of these, but when you click on the abstract form, it's a form and it allows you to browse to your computer, wherever your desktop, wherever you saved your abstract, and upload it, and then you can preview it in your package. Same thing with your budget narrative. You can prepare your budget narrative and you can upload it there. Now, one thing
Lourdes,
is that there are two different budgets, okay? So, Lisa, do you have a question?
no, I was just going to ask you if you could go over that, the difference between the
Yeah,
budget that's in your 65 pages versus this one.
yes.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay, great question. Okay. So within your narrative, your project narrative, so that's the one that gets inserted here, right? Project narrative. You have only your 1 year budget. Your first year is included within your narrative. Okay. And so that's what you're including in there. In this other section, budget narrative, okay? In the budget narrative, that's where you're including your 5 year budgets, okay? And so you're going to attach that as an attachment. All those 5 year budgets are going to go into that budget narrative. Now,
There's no format, right? There's no specific
no,
format.
no specific format. However, I do want to say a however there is that remember, if you're putting 5 year budgets in there, I would be cautious with the size of that attachment. Remember, in the instructions, they're telling you they want you to keep it at less than 5 MB, and some of those attachments can be fairly large. So you're keeping all of this application plus that additional document, that budget narrative for 5 years that you're attaching might make it exceed 5 MB. So one thing that I recommend for you to do is if you're using Adobe to create your PDF, make sure you compact that, right? That you condense it, that PDF. If you don't have the ability to do that, then there are some free platforms out there that you can use to really compact that file and make it smaller, because otherwise it can be fairly large. Okay. So I recommend that you do that with your budget narrative before you upload it here, and or you give it to the person who's uploading it to this package.
Okay.
So
And
so
it goes
that's
without saying that all these documents are PDF. Don't forget, I once had a
yep,
client that didn't get funded because they just put the Word version, even though it
yes,
said
which
PDF all over the place. Can you believe it? Quick
no,
question,
yeah.
Lourdes, since you're here. Should the documents, and I think you just mentioned this, but just to clarify, should the documents be locked before I hit submit?
Oh, yes, they'll be locked. Okay, yeah. So
Okay.
before, because you have to lock them to mean they're done. They're done, right? So really,
Okay.
the locking is that they're done. They're ready. And then once everything has passed, then you'll see. I would run a check application. You'll notice it's kind of grayed out here, but you can check the application for completeness. Now, when it's running a check for completeness, it just wants to know, did you attach it? Did you attach the narrative? It doesn't know how many attachments you're going to attach. So you need to be careful and make sure you're attaching the profile, the assurances, the absolute priority, the invitational priority, your logic model. Okay. It doesn't know that. It just is giving you an option to upload. So you need to make sure you check for that completeness, well, even though it will do a check for you. The check is just looking for any questions that might have been required. That did you fill those in? But it wouldn't allow you to lock it if it wasn't complete, right? So,
So
um,
Lourdes, I have a couple of questions here. I'm going to go through them in order so that you might have to jump around, but I'm glad that you have the screen up because you might be able to jump to it. Just to make sure on the application checklist, there are 3 forms listed under assurances and certifications.
yeah.
Well, number 1, disclosure of lobbying activities, the standard
Mhm.
form LLL. Number 2, grants.gov lobbying form. And number 3, assurances, non-constructional programs, SF 424B. When we log into grants.gov, we see the first 2 forms, but SF 424B, which is
Yeah.
the non-construction for assurances, is not there. How do we
Yeah.
check off that part of the application checklist?
Remember, the assurances is the document that's in your application. So you need to make sure that you have downloaded from grants.gov the assurances form. Okay. So that's a totally separate form. That's the one, right, where we say that we're going to meet that 2/3 requirement, that 1-page document. Okay. So download that from grants.gov. That's what's going to get uploaded in the assurances in the other attachments section.
So
Okay.
it says when we log on to grants.gov, we see the first 2 forms, but
Mhm.
that SF 424B is not there because you have
Mhm.
to dig in deeper to get it.
No, it's there. It's remember
Oh,
that SF 424B is part of the other form that we just looked at.
oh, okay, okay.
Yeah.
Is that
Hmm.
cleared? Somebody said anonymous, so I can't say their name. Let me
Hmm.
know if that's clear, that
Hmm.
you where that is. Okay, so I just put that
Yeah.
answered live. Okay. When do we get a new PO number?
Okay, when you submit the application, just real quickly, because I don't think I answered the question regarding the lobbying form. Okay,
Okay, go ahead.
let me go back to the lobbying form, and then I'll come back to your PO number. Okay, so you'll notice on the screen that it says disclosure of lobbying activities optional. Grants.gov lobbying form optional. Okay, you do not have to submit that. Those are optional. However, if you decide that you want to fill out that form, then you need to click on include in the package. So see this little box right here? You click on that. That will open up the lobbying form. If and that lobbying form, if you are lobbying, it's going to ask you, and or if you have an organization that is lobbying on your behalf, it asks for you to fill it out and identify those individuals, identify those names. Okay. If you fill it out and you don't have anybody that's doing lobbying for you, but you want to fill out that form, where it asks you for the names of those individuals, you're going to have to say not applicable because you're not lobbying. Okay. So, but you notice you have an option. You don't have to fill that out to be a part of, to be considered complete with this package. Okay. So in this case, I'm not going to check those. We don't lobby. Our institution doesn't lobby. And for many of us, we don't lobby. So I don't have to worry about those optionals. Okay. So that's in response to the questions about the lobbying form. They are not required. They are optional. Okay, moving
Okay.
back to the question about your PO number. When will you get a PO number? Okay, so we have this application is due on the 14th. Okay, and so I hope that many of you are kind of like me, that you're waiting for just somebody to hit that and tell you everything is complete so that submission can go through, right? But your application, you want to ensure that you get it in on time because your application has to be received. It has to be validated. And that takes at least 24 hours. Now, I can tell you that I'm still waiting for my talent search application to be validated. I haven't gotten my notification yet. Okay. And I've reached out to other folks and they're like, I haven't gotten validated yet. Now, my institution's been really busy as well. So they would get the notification before I do. And so maybe they have it already. They just haven't had a chance to forward it to me. Because they even at the website, excuse me, I'm thinking APR, once you get this grant submitted, then it will come back to you and say, okay, it's been validated. They'll send you a couple of confirmations, a couple of email messages to say we have received your application. Okay, it's going to go now to the next validation. And it'll send you like some links of here's where you can check the progress of where it's at. And I haven't done that to check to see if it's been validated, but because I've been really focusing on EOC. But I could go back and see where is my submission for talent search in the process. But you can check those links once everything gets accepted and it finally says, okay, you have been validated, you will get another email message from them, and it's going to give you a number, and it's going to say, okay, here's your PO number, and it's going to say P0, it's going to be our EOC number, the 66A, and then it's going to say 26, and then there's some digits that follow that. Those digits really give you an idea about which application yours was. So if it was 2000 after that, this is 60A00 2000, then you were the 2000th applicant for EOC. Okay. So it kind of gives you an idea about how many applications they've received. Now, some of those applications might be duplicates, right? Because if somebody submitted and then realized, oh, I forgot to include something, they can resubmit. And their most recent application is the one that gets reviewed. Okay. Anything prior to that will be discarded. And so that's why sometimes in the competition, you know, they'll say, we received X number of applications, but we threw out X number. And that's why those X number of applicants that weren't complete or didn't get hit really submitted, they got discarded. And so there's lesser applicants that were reviewed. But that number that keeps going up, right? If you submitted number 2000 and then realized they made a mistake and then resubmitted again and you had 2001, 2001 is going to be the one that gets reviewed and your 2000 record will be thrown out because you as the applicant have a newer application. Okay, but you have to ensure that newer application gets submitted in time, right? That it needs to be date stamped by that 14th prior to midnight, right? Because it's 11:59, right? 11:59 point whatever seconds.
Eastern time. Eastern time. Remember that
Eastern
Eastern time.
Yeah, yes.
That throws people off.
Mhm.
So Lourdes, what if the target area covers 2 congressional districts on that form
Mhm.
where you're putting in what congressional district your
Mhm.
address is in or your
Mhm.
target
So
areas?
you'll notice that when when I had that, it said, do you want to attach something like if you're listing several districts? It says I have an additional like Word document maybe where I've typed out my additional districts, but I'm not certain that they'll look at that. So I would first of all make sure I choose one of the districts that has extremely high mean because I don't know what they're going to do with the others or whether they'll even look at that attachment. But you do have an opportunity to attach. Um, and sometimes I don't know whether it accepts it. That's the thing. Okay.
It does say though to attach if you
Mhm.
have additional
Mhm.
target areas,
Yeah.
right? I remember
Mhm. Yep.
reading that
It
now.
does.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so you can do that. Okay, great.
Mhm.
Okay, so let's see, we got answered that one. Okay, this is one, the business office. Our business office has stated that in the budget form SF 424A, the
Mhm.
first budget total should be the entire 5-year amount,
No.
since the instructions say Section A, Budget Summary
Mhm.
1E, Federal, include the total amount requested for the entire performance period.
Mhm.
Um,
Yep.
so they were like, I'm confused.
Yeah. Yeah, we are asked within the instructions to submit the first year performance period. So that very first year in that first section. Okay. We will in the section E be asked to submit the entire. So if we go back to this one, right? Now if they're thinking section E here, Section E is asking you for the 5 years. Okay, so if they're saying, so this is 1E, this is asking you for your 5 years. Okay, but not on the very first part, 1A, this one. They're only asking you here for the very first year. Okay.
Okay, so hopefully that clears that up, clear as mud, because it is very confusing, right, Lourdes? It is.
Oh, it is. It
I
is.
feel for y'all because it says
Uh-huh.
entire, so in 2 different places. Okay,
Mhm.
so hopefully that clears that up. Okay, so I'm gonna
Yeah.
answer that live.
Mhm.
Okay, program assurances document, is that the same as the SF 424B? The
No, that
program
is.
assurances document? No, it's different,
Mm,
right?
It's different. The program assurances document, again, is part of the package. You have to download. So if you go to grants.gov where the package is, it asks you to download. You can download the profile sheet, the RFP or request for proposal, and it asks you to download the assurances. Okay.
Okay. If they are optional, then why are the lobbying forms listed on the RFP checklist, even though they're optional?
Mhm. No, but probably because they are included within the package, but as you saw, they're not required. They are optional.
Okay, thank you for that. Here it says on page 1 of the Federal Assistance SF 424, form question 15, it asks for us to add supporting documents. Do
No, you
we
don't.
attach
Mhm.
the abstract there? No, no, right?
No, mm-mm,
You don't.
no.
The abstract has its own. You put the abstract where,
Mm-hmm.
Lourdes? Remind everyone, please.
So the abstract is included. Let me get back to my form here. Oh, it timed me out. But when you log in um, to grants.gov, I mean to the to grants.gov, for each one of those sections, there is a place to upload. Let me go ahead and log back in here so we can get back to here. Hold on a second.
Oh, okay, and while you're
Okay.
doing that, I'm going to talk about, someone had
Mhm.
asked, can you show an example of what the 5-year budget narrative looks like? Okay, there's no right or wrong. There's no right or wrong. You can do it in Word. You could, like Lourdes said, like, here's a couple of examples. You could take your 1-year budget that's in the proposal and duplicate it across the board for all 5 years and just change it to year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5. Just make sure when you make it a PDF that you compress it so it's not super big. Or you could use your Excel budget where some of y'all have already planned, and I've done that with my clients, Lourdes, that we've done a 5-year budget. And then I let them decide, look, we could be for real and take the time and effort to make it balanced, because if you plugged in a 3% increase, then there's going to be a gap there. So do you want to address it now or later? Or do we do a save as and just make it look like everything stays the same for all 5 years? And in the budget narrative that we do, Lourdes, it's in Excel, but then in between the budget categories, there's a text box that talks about the narrative, that goes into detail about what that category is. So some of them are using that and making it a PDF and uploading that as their 5-year budget. There's no right or wrong. You're gonna have to do an annual budget anyways, but I don't know
Mhm.
if you have any other guidance regarding that, Lourdes, or how you did yours.
No. So what I did for mine is that I did a kind of like a summary. So I took my Excel spreadsheet and I did, okay, here's my year one. And then I just did a column for year two, year three, year four, year five. Kept it all on one. I took a screenshot of that in terms of a PDF. And then I did each one of those years. So I took my same budget sheet and I said, the first year, I'm not changing any amounts. I just did, this is the year for 26, 27, 27, 28, 28, 29, and I attached that. So it ended up being like 25 pages, which was made the document to be very long, right? And so then I compressed it so I could make it a very small file to attach. Okay. So you'll notice like here, so if I went to my abstract form, see, this is it. All you do is search. You just say, well, here's my abstract, and then click on attach. And so I browse and I attach my documents. Okay. I'm going to not lock that. Same thing. I'm still waiting for my assurances page. That's why that's in progress. But if you were to look at my attachments, now you'll see I've attached my profile, I've attached my absolute priority, my invitational, my logic model, and I'm going to upload the assurances page once it's signed by my institution. That will be my main document here, the assurances. Okay, so that's how I have all my attachments. So I just want to leave that unlocked again for them to look at that. Okay, again, my original application, I showed you that one. That one just lists I'm applying. It's a new grant. It's tied directly to the application itself. To say this is an EOC, it gives it the application package information. The budget information section that we looked at is just, this document. Okay. But it's in the form, but it looks exactly like this, right? Where I filled in, here's EOC, here's 84.066A. I filled in for my first year. I'm asking for X amount of dollars. It totals. And then the reason why, if you were to put, remember I mentioned that there's some totals in here. If I were to put all 5 years in here, that's what's going to come down here in my first year. For here, it's going to plug that in here, and then it's going to say I need X amount of money, and this has to total to that first year. So that's why I don't want to put those 5 years in there because a lot of this gets pre-populated. Okay, so if your budget office even were to do that and put that value in there, the form's not going to be correct. So it's not going to let it put those 5 years into this first section here. It's not going to allow you to do that. Okay, because of those formulas that are already in the form. Okay. So, but yeah, let me see any additional questions.
Let me see here. I do have one, Lourdes. Regarding the budget again, you know how we do the budget where we do the modified indirect cost.
Mm-hmm.
And then when we get to so we're all being compliance and taking five, all that stuff. And then we get to the federal form and they don't even have a place for it. How do you handle that?
I'm sorry. Oh, this form here, is it the one that you're seeing on your screen?
Yeah, you know how it doesn't have a place for you to be absolutely correct like you are on your budget narrative and your proposal where you have modified total direct cost.
Mhm.
It doesn't have that there. What do you do?
No, no. So I just took, so yeah, because I don't have them, but it is within my budget, within my narrative, in my application. So I'm using my budget narrative, right, to guide me of what I'm going to put here. How much my personnel, my fringe travel, equipment will be zero. Whatever I'm putting in for supplies, zero for contractual construction, and then anything I have in other, that will total to I. So I'm kind of using as a guideline. Um, I know that from that right, my total direct costs, I need to subtract anything that's a per participant cost or any rental, right? So that I can come up, whether I have to jot it on a piece of paper or whatever, to figure out like what is my modified total direct cost that is going to be subject to that 8%. I don't have a place to put it in here. You're right. I don't. But I have to figure it out and then put that value in there in my column in J for my indirect charges. And the sum of I plus J has to equal K and the amount of money I'm asking for in that first year. Okay.
So you make it work.
I make it work. Yeah, because you're right, Lisa. I mean, I'm like, what's the modified direct total? But I had to figure that out separately because it doesn't lend itself to doing that on this form. So I hear you. Yeah.
So remember that, y'all. Don't panic at and again, this is why you don't want to try to do this at the last minute. Of course, a lot of you cannot submit. Almost everybody in the call, I bet you most of the people here, we don't have the permission to hit the submit button, but you should have access to upload for their review. And so you want to make sure you don't, at the last minute go, oh my gosh, why is the budget's wrong. We got to go back and fix the budget. No, 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 no. Don't change anything in the narrative. Make it work on this sheet. Everything here is a placeholder. Somebody once told me, like, when you're worried about, okay, is it for the first year budget or for the 5-year budget total? Someone once told me, hey, it's better to go lower because you don't want to go higher because that might bump you out of consideration completely. But if you go lower, sometimes they understand, oh, they misunderstood the question. But most of the time it's the first year rule of thumb, right? Most of the time I hear the answers are it's about first year, and only in some places you put the whole 5 years, right?
Yeah. And remember, this is the first time they've asked us for those 5 years. We've never in prior grants given them the 5 years. Okay. This is the very first time in Talent Search we saw it, and now in EOC that they're asking for how much are you going to need over those 5 years.
And that's a usual thing in Europe and in
mhm,
Title III, Title
mhm.
V grants. We're used to that.
Yeah.
In fact, in the budget narrative in the 65 pages for those proposals, they require it there within the 65 pages. So talk about fun trying to put all that, and we're able to do it. So I kind of do the same thing on Excel. I just, Lourdes, I don't know if you've ever seen a Title III budget. And those of you that have looked at Title III or even Gear Up, ask your Gear Up colleagues, hey, can you let me look at your budget section or your budget narrative? Because Gear Up has always had to submit a separate budget narrative for 5 years. So you can get that information from them too if you're interested. But I'm doing the spreadsheet deal where it's got the spreadsheet with all 5 years across, and then a category, a text box in between explaining, and then I add on the years 2 through 5 will be the same,
Mhm.
and it ends up being maybe 2 or 3 pages total.
Yeah.
Converted to PDF,
Mhm.
just to keep it safe. Real question. We're planning on paying for a peer review only in year 2. How can
Mhm.
I put this on the 1 year budget section, the project narrative? 5 years ago, we lost a point because we did not include the peer review in the project narrative budget section. What I would do, two things. If you're going to plan on playing, if you are going to want to pay for it, then you should probably say so in the evaluate. First of all, in the budget, you might want to put there in the budget narrative where it talks about other, that in future years you plan on but you're paying for a peer review, or you can make sure in your evaluation plan, which is the last thing they'll read, is when you state that you're going to plan to pay for a peer review, that you're going to do that in the future. I mean, so you see what I'm saying? Don't make it. Maybe the reader thought, oh, you said you're going to do a peer review, and I don't see it in your budget. Well, I meant to say it's going to be done between the second or third year. And if you
Mhm.
want to put a reminder, please,
Mhm.
in the future, in years 2 or 3, funds will be set aside to pay for that. So that way you're covered both ways, right, Lourdes?
Mhm.
You
Mhm.
can't,
That's the way
because
I did it too, Lisa. So that was a great recommendation. I did it that way, and I just kind of put that this is what we're going to anticipate spending for our peer review in year 3. I think that's at the end of year 2, so after it following the conclusion of year 2.
right.
And so it would really be paid out of our funds for year 3. Um,
It is awkward, and that
mhm.
is something we have to handle. If your institution is going to do it in kind, then they won't be looking for it. So most of my clients this time, their institution is going to do it, has said they would offer to do it in kind. But I am telling them that it's going to happen between the second and third year. But we state that in the evaluation that although they do they do their annual internal evaluation processes, then once every funding cycle, they will do an external evaluation. External meaning that it's outside of the department, not meaning that it has to be off campus. Okay. Someone says, if we include a logic model, should we do a page or two of text explaining it, or is it okay to submit just the model? I mean, I don't think you have to break it down and explain it to the reader, but you never know how well versed the reader is with logic models. So I would recommend that you spend maybe just a couple of sentences, either in a way gently reminding the reader what a logic model is for,
Mhm.
what its components are, which could be very brief, believe it or not, and then tie it into the following logic model was developed to blah 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 blah. So I would
Mhm.
say no more than 2 or 3 sentences at least to
Mhm.
introduce the logic model. And of
Mhm.
course, to me, the logic model is a good place to answer in the evaluation plan the first question on how it's appropriate. What type of
Mhm.
evaluation model is appropriate for the grant? And I start talking about, well, we have a logic model. And so I
Mhm.
talk a little bit about it. You could even, if you have to save it for, how it gets its own page, you could start going on and talking about the other things that are appropriate, and then just say that the logic model found on the following page, it doesn't have to be immediately afterward, because you don't want to just have a paragraph, Lourdes, and then
Mhm.
a whole big empty page, and then talk, since the logic model
Mhm.
has to be on its own if you're going
Mhm.
to include it in the narrative. I don't know. I'm old
Mhm.
school narrative. I
Mhm.
mean, I'm old school Lourdes, because I
Mhm.
don't think the readers are
Mhm.
going to look at anything in the
Mhm.
attachments besides the
Yeah.
priorities and the narrative,
Yeah.
65 pages.
Yeah, I'm with you, Lisa. I mean, like, I mentioned the because I originally had a narrative, but then what was going to be the deciding factor was with there are too many other things I included that I felt were really important that it required me to put my logic model as an attachment. But I did
Mhm.
mention, right, and within my evaluation section that that the logic model informs a lot of our practices in through our evaluation process and the delivery of services. And I said, so
Right.
the attack I said the logic model, to let the reader know there is an attachment of a
Right,
logic model
right.
that's informing our practices. So,
And yeah,
the other
and I
thing,
know,
yeah,
I know I go back on the evaluation plan because it is important to stress that you
mhm,
should not just have the logic model there in the narrative that I developed. It's a big part discussing what it is and what it breaks down to
mhm.
be. It's talked about a bit, but I don't go into the detail. Like I used to have a whole page for the CPP
Oh yeah.
talking
Mhm,
to the reader like
mhm,
they were complete, didn't know
mhm,
anything about it. Now they're a little bit more well versed, so I don't
mhm.
spend as much time. But yeah, it's not just thrown in there. Believe me, there's a little
Yeah.
introduction to it.
Yeah,
Okay, so
and then Lisa said, be brief because quickly realized I'm going to have to put it as an attachment, and so and remember the attachments don't count towards your 65 pages. So I thought,
right,
okay,
right.
hmm
Here's another great question, and we'll let y'all go after this, but it's just so many great questions. If we don't include cost of living increases, will the staff be held to the static salaries listed in this 5-year budget model? No, this is not a real budget. This is not, you are not committing to this is what it has to be. Lourdes, I don't know if you want to speak to that, but I just can't stress enough how they want to get an estimate, an idea, but it does not mean that you are stuck with any of these amounts because stuff can happen. Every year, they ask you to turn in an annual budget. That's when you work on your real budget with real
yeah.
increases. And that's a headache, right, Lourdes?
Yeah, oh, yeah. That's when you really negotiate too, because remember, you have the authority. The project director has the authority to manage this program, and you do what you need to do, and maybe that even after you got funded, with there's no major changes, but maybe you have to, because of salaries, you have to modify, the time and effort of your administrative assistant, if you were lucky to put an administrative assistant into your budget, you know. Um, but yeah, you're not held to that. So they just
You
want to
can
know, like,
spend,
give me a best idea of how much and how you're going to spend the money. So it's really about a
I
plan
mean,
and your management plan.
if you really are compelled to do so, and remember, it's all about whatever you need to do to make yourself feel better about this. If you're going to spend the hours or hour, maybe you're really good, it would take me hours probably. If you want to if you want to do a projected real budget with increases, then you're going to have to figure out where to cut from every year, other areas to make it balance across the board. And
Mhm.
you're going to have to do that anyway on an annual basis. But of course, you're not thinking about, you can't control how much or how little the feds are going to give us if you're assuming 0% or, no increase every year. But what you can't predict is really your insurance throughout the whole 5 years and even your salary. So at best, maybe you could do a real budget for the second year, but you really don't know what's going to happen years 3, 4, and 5,
Mhm.
with your insurance and other costs. So you see, it's all a big estimate. If
Mhm.
you can do that and have that there, but either way, you won't be held to it because you've got to redo it anyway. So it's up to you. Do what makes you feel better, okay, about this. We're just making sure you don't miss something, or maybe put too much money you're asking for rather than a little bit less, and that kind of thing. So that's just right, Lourdes. You got to do you and make yourself feel better. I think, did we answer all the questions? I think.
Yeah. Teresa, what do you like to do? Do you like to put an increase in there? Oh, I think you're mute. Are you muted? I can't
I'm
hear
sorry.
you.
I'm
Oh, no,
sorry.
there you go.
Not with Trio. I tend to
Mhm.
just kind of keep it balanced throughout the years and then deal with it on an annual basis. Yeah.
Mhm.
Right. It's a headache, right? It's a headache alone as it is. If you're only dealing with the next year's increases, can you imagine? I would give myself a migraine trying to
Mhm.
figure out for the next 5 years under the stress of trying to get this submitted. You're going to have to
Mhm.
redo it anyway, but it doesn't mean that they're going to say, oh, no, 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 you cannot give your people an increase because that's what you said it was. At worst case scenario, you can't ask for any more money than we just have to imagine as though we're going to be stuck with that same flat amount the whole 5 years. That's probably the only thing that I'm hoping at this case, in this climate, I'm hoping that that's a for sure thing, right?
Mhm.
And yeah, we could be disappointed that we don't get an increase, but even that I can't guarantee that, right? So there's so
Mhm.
many what ifs. So you might drive yourself
Mhm.
crazy trying to be exactly perfect, right?
Yeah, and we've
To the
been there
to the
before.
penny.
We've been there before. I mean, there were many years. I mean, having done this for so long, we've been there, right? Where our budgets were frozen with we had no increases, so we had to,
Mhm.
manage the money. And as you said, Lisa, that's the first thing we saw is a lot of the services were cut because of the salaries of those benefit rates. So yeah, it's
Yes, yes.
unfortunate.
So but it doesn't account for when we'll have carryover, when somebody
Mm-hmm,
leaves us and quits in the
mm-hmm,
middle of, you can't predict. If I could predict a 5-year budget, I wouldn't
mm-hmm.
be doing this, y'all. I'd be in Vegas, counting cards or something, or doing the lottery or whatever. But there is
Mm-hmm,
just no way. There's so many variables that you are totally out of your control. It would drive you
mm-hmm.
crazy trying to be as perfect as you can. So
Yeah.
anyway, let's get this sucker turned in.
Amen.
Even if you're waiting on the narrative and you're still
Mm-hmm,
pulling needs section data, make
mm-hmm,
sure all the other pieces are uploaded. The
mm-hmm,
budget part you should have solidified by now. So that's
mm-hmm,
a big part of 5 or 6, 2 or 3 forms, right, Lourdes?
mm-hmm. Yeah.
Just alone as it is with
Mm-hmm.
the attachments. What do you think?
Yeah. Well, Lisa, one thing you mentioned earlier, and I mean, I feel like lucky on my side of it because I can see that package, right? I can feel it, I can touch it, I can see the attachments in there. But some of us don't always have that opportunity. We're relying on somebody else and we're trying to tell them, here's all my attachments. But did they ensure they got all those attachments? I can tell you through experience, one year our talent search person was new and she didn't attach my CPPs. And I was
Oh,
devastated. I was devastated because I was thinking like we've lost this, right? We've lost this because I didn't have the opportunity then to ensure that that person had attached everything. And then she said, "Oh my gosh." She said, let me go back in there and I was like, no, don't even touch it because it was so late in the process of submitting that if she would have tried to resubmit with the attachment, it would have been date stamped as late and our application would have been thrown out because that was the
wow.
last application. So I said, don't touch it. We're just going to have to let it ride. Right. And I was like devastated. So,
I remember that. I
yeah,
remember that. That was
yes,
last time you were so upset, but then you
yes,
still
yeah.
got it even without the
Yeah,
points
I mean, we
because of good
got
old
it.
prior experience.
Yep, we had good old prior experience. We had a perfect score and we were refunded. But I can tell you folks, I know, take a deep breath. And if you're not the person submitting it, ask them. I mean, before, I would ask, can you, because after that happened, right? I started saying, can I be there? Can you share your screen and let me see what you're attaching, right? Not that I have to like hit the button or anything like that. Can I watch you hit the button? I mean, that became, and so that's how now they've said, okay, Lotus, we're just going to tell you to upload everything and then we will check everything. And so, but that's how that came around to my now being able to see the package and doing all of that because of this incident that happened. But I can tell you folks, it's devastating. So take a deep breath, ensure everything is complete, feel good. I mean, the narrative, don't worry the little stuff because sometimes we'll say like, oh, I didn't do that. Oh, no, I need to go, and that's going to happen. And we got to say, okay, I feel comfortable at this point, and we got to make it sure we get it in on time. So
Yes, let's do
don't
that.
forget to
Thank you
breathe.
so much, Lourdes. This has been so helpful. I noticed that
Mm-hmm.
Donna said she's going to have this ready this afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
On the, I guess we'll do a post, Donna, or we'll put it in the, we're just going to do an early post since people are working on this. What do you think, Donna? Is that what you meant?
I think what we meant was it's going to be on the YouTube channel this afternoon.
Okay,
Yes.
great. Great. So look for our YouTube channel. If you want to see it quicker, this whole recording, it'll be there if you want to share it. Thank you so much, Lourdes. Thank you so much, Teresa. Thank you all for your questions. I'm learning too. I haven't submitted directly in years either. So I love to hear when Lourdes goes through it. And she's so great to share this information with all of us. And I just wish, Lourdes, they had you there on some sort of committee to try to make this a lot easier and make sense. There's got to be a better way. This is almost
Yeah.
like a brain twister or teaser or something like that to on top of the stress. It's not fun,
Yeah,
y'all. And
yeah.
I'd rather write the
It's a lot of
proposals
that.
all day long than upload these darn forms, because these forms are confusing. Thank you so much, y'all. Sorry to keep you a little while, but I want to wish everybody there good luck. Light a candle, say a Hail Mary, do whatever you got to do. But good luck, everyone. And, we'll try to answer some questions if you want to send us some questions as much as we can. But if it takes us a minute, it's because I think we're all working on our proposals as well with our clients, but we'll get to them as soon as we can. Thank you all so much. Thank you, Donna and Leah. Let's go ahead and thank you,
To work
Lourdes.
with you, Lisa and Teresa and Don and Leah.
Bye.
Thanks again.
Thanks.
Thank you all so much. Thanks, everyone.